Hey everybody, today we're going to read chapter 14 of The Trumpet of the Swan by E.B. White. I'm excited to read this chapter to you today. I'm having so much fun with this book. And we found out that Louis is going somewhere. Do you remember where it said in chapter 13? Where did Sam Beaver tell him he should go try to get a job? Yeah, Boston. So he's got a long way to go. So he's headed to Boston. And I also want to show you your vocabulary words today before we read chapter 14. The words are all math words. They're all related to math and counting. And they are double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, and sextuple. So if you need time to write those down, just pause the video and you'll be hearing those words in this chapter. Here we go. Chapter 14, Boston. Louis liked Boston the minute he saw it from the sky. Far beneath him was a river. Near the river was a park. In the park was a lake. In the lake was an island, and on the shore was a dock. Tied to the dock was a boat shaped like a swan. The place looked ideal. There was even a very fine hotel nearby. Louis circled twice, then glided down and splashed to a stop in the lake. Several ducks swam up to look him over. The park was called the Public Garden. Everybody in Boston knows about it and goes there to sit on benches in the sun, to stroll about, to feed the pigeons and the squirrels, and to ride the Swan boat. A ride costs 25 cents for grown-ups, 15 cents for children. Okay, I'm going to pause there for just a minute and tell you two things. The first thing I'm going to tell you is that if you're watching this and you're a student in my class, I have assigned a book to you on Epic called Make Way for Ducklings, which is a different story, but it also takes place in this same park that E.B. White is talking about in this book. So, and it's not a long novel like this. It's just a picture book that I think you would enjoy. It's kind of a famous picture book. When it starts, you might be like, oh yeah, I've seen this before. And it's a read aloud. So they'll read it, Epic will read it aloud to you. The second thing I want to tell you is, if you went to Boston today in 2020, I don't think it would only cost 25 cents for grown-ups and 15 cents for children to ride the Swan boat. In fact, when our family went in 2013, I think, it was definitely a lot more expensive than that. But keep in mind that this book was written, I'm checking the copyright in the front of the book, in 1970. So this book is 50 years old. So 50 years ago, that's how much it costs to ride the Swan boat. Maybe we could do some research and find out how much it costs now. All right, let's get back on track. After a short rest and a bite to eat, Louis swam over to the dock and climbed out on the shore. The man who was taking tickets for the Swan boat ride seemed surprised to see an enormous white swan wearing so many things around his neck. Hello, said the boatman. Louis lifted his trumpet. Hoo-hoo, he replied. At the sound, every bird in the park looked up. The boatman jumped. Boston residents as far as a mile away looked up and said, "What's that?" Nobody in Boston had ever heard a trumpeter swan. The sound made a big impression. People eating a late breakfast in the Ritz Hotel on Arlington Street looked up from their food. Waiters and bellboys said, "What's that?" The man in charge of the Swan boat was probably the most surprised in Boston. He examined Louis's trumpet, his money bag, his life-saving medal, his slate, and his chalk pencil. Then he asked Louis what he wanted. Louis wrote on the slate, "Have trumpet, need work." Okay, said the boatman, you've got yourself a job. A boat leaves here in 5 minutes for a trip around the lake. Your job will be to swim in front of the boat, leading the way and blowing your horn. What salary will I get? Asked Louis on his slate. We'll settle that later when we see how you make out, said the boatman. This is just a tryout. Louis nodded. He arranged his things neatly around his neck, entered the water quietly, took up a position a few yards in front of the boat and waited. He wondered what would make the boat go. He couldn't see a motor and there were no oars. In the forward part of the boat, there were benches for the passengers. In the stern was a structure that was shaped like a swan. It was hollow. Inside of it was a seat, like a bicycle seat. And there were 2 pedals inside, like the pedals of a bicycle. When the passengers were all aboard, a young man appeared. He climbed onto the stern of the boat and sat down on the seat inside the hollow-shaped structure and began to push the pedals with his feet as though he were riding a bike. A paddle wheel began to turn. It's a paddle boat. The boatman cast the lines off, and as the young man pedaled, the Swan boat slowly moved out into the lake. Louis led the way, swimming with his left foot, holding his trumpet with his right foot. "Coho!" said Louis's trumpet. The wild sound rang loud and clear and stirred everyone's blood. Then, realizing that he should play something appropriate, Louis played a song he had heard the boys sing at camp. "Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. Merrily, 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 life is but a dream." He played that on his trumpet. The Swan boat passengers were beside themselves with joy and excitement. A real live swan playing a trumpet? Life was a dream, all right. What a lark! What fun! What pleasure! "This is real groovy," cried a boy in the front seat. "This bird is as good as Louis Armstrong, the famous trumpet player. I'm going to call him Louis." Well, that's funny, because that's already his name, isn't it? Louis Armstrong is a famous trumpet player, and that's real history. I'm almost certain he's not alive anymore. I'd have to look that up, but Louis Armstrong is real. And Louis, in our book, was given that name before he ever learned to play the trumpet, which is kind of cool. Here's a picture of the Swan boat. You can see people on the bridge looking down. You can see the people on the boat. You can see the big hollow swan where the boy in the back is pedaling to make it go. And then you can see Louis in the water playing his trumpet. All right, let's keep going. The passengers cheered loudly. Louis swam ahead again, leading the way. Slowly and gracefully, the boat circled the island while Louis played "Gentle on My Mind" on his trumpet. It was a lovely September morning, hazy and warm. Trees were beginning to show their autumn colors, and then Louis played "Old Man River." When the Swan boat docked and the passengers got off, long lines of people were waiting to get aboard for the next ride. Business was booming. Another boat was being made ready to accommodate the crowds. Everyone wanted to ride the Swan boats behind a real live swan playing a trumpet. It was the biggest happening in Boston in a long time. People like strange events and strange and unusual happenings, and the Swan boat, with Louis out front leading the way, suddenly became the most popular attraction in Boston. "You're hired," said the boatman when Louis climbed out onto the bank. "With you playing the trumpet, I can double my business. I can triple it. I can quadruple it. I can quintuple it. I can sextuple it. Anyway, I'll give you a steady job." There's all your vocabulary words. You have to find out what that means. Louis lifted his slate. "What's my salary?" he said. The boatman gazed around at the crowds waiting to get aboard. $100 a week, he said. "I'll pay you $100 every Saturday if you'll swim ahead of the boats and play your horn. Is it a deal?" Louis nodded his head. The man seemed pleased, but puzzled. "If it isn't too much to ask," said the boatman, "would you mind telling me why you're so interested in money?" "Everybody is," Louis wrote on his slate. "Well, yes, I know," said the boatman. "Everybody likes money. It's a crazy world, but I mean, why would a swan need money? You can get your meals just by dipping down and pulling up tasty plants at the bottom of the lake. What do you need money for?" Louis erased his slate and wrote, "I'm in debt," he wrote. He thought about his poor father who had stolen the trumpet and about the poor storekeeper in Billings, Montana, who had been robbed and whose store had been damaged. Louis knew he must go on earning money until he could pay off what he owed. "Okay," said the boatman, addressing the crowd. "This swan says he's in debt. Being in debt means you owe someone money." I could have made that one of your vocabulary words, but Maybe I did in one of the old chapters. I can't remember. Let's keep going. All aboard for the next ride! And he began selling tickets. The boatman owned several boats, all of them shaped like a swan. Pretty soon, every boat was full, and the money was flowing in. All day long, the swan boats circled the lake. I'm getting uncomfortable, sorry. I'm just gonna stand up. All day long, the swan boats circled the lake, carrying their load of happy people, many of them children. Louis played his trumpet as he had never played it before. He liked the job. He loved to entertain people, and he loved music. The boatman was just as pleased as he could be. When the day was over and the boats had made their last trip, the boatman walked over to Louis, who was standing on the shore arranging his things. "You've done great," said the boatman. "You're a good swan. I wish I'd had you a long time ago. And now, well, where are you planning to spend the night?" "Here on the lake," Louis wrote. "Well, I don't know about that," said the man uneasily. "An awful lot of people are curious about you. They might make trouble for you. I don't trust the people who will hang around this park at night. You might get kidnapped. I don't want to lose you. I think I'll take you across the street to the Ritz-Carlton Hotel and get you a room for the night. It's clean and the food is good, and it would be safer. Then I can be sure you'll come to work in the morning." Louis didn't think much of this idea, but he agreed to go. He thought, well, I've never spent a night in a hotel. Maybe it would be interesting. So he walked along with the boatman. They left the park and crossed Arlington Street and entered the lobby of the Ritz Hotel. It had been a long, tiring day for Louis, but he felt relieved knowing that he had a good job and he could earn money in Boston as a musician. That's a cool chapter, huh? Chapter 15 is called A Night at the Ritz. Now, I will tell you this. When I took my family to Boston, Mr. McConnell and I took our 4 kids to Boston. We did not stay at the Ritz Hotel. It's too expensive and fancy. We actually rented a small house in New Hampshire, and we took the train into Boston one day. But most of our time we spent in our little small house that we rented, and we visited different places. So Louis is getting to stay in a super special place. All right, guys, I'll see you next time when we read about Louis' experience at the Ritz Hotel. Thanks for joining me today. Bye-bye.